Hello, everyone, and welcome to OTC's October webinar, Ask OTC. This is your opportunity to be able to ask our staff any question that you have about our processes, our programs, and our services. Just a few housekeeping items. We are recording and doing live captioning, so please keep your mics muted, and if you have questions,
You wanted it on you.
go ahead and start putting those in the chat box and we'll ask them. I'd like to start off with the first question to our Executive Director, Ian McClure. Could you tell us a little bit more about what the OTC office does?
Sure, and hopefully you can hear me with a mask because we are appropriately abiding by CDC guidelines here in the OTC office. And so, at its highest level, right, the Office of Technology Commercialization is here to identify, protect, and commercialize the intellectual property or really the inventions, the technologies that come from the great research here at the University of Kentucky. And so that sounds simplistic. It comes with many, many parts, and we're going to talk about, I think, a number of those parts here and answer any questions to try to at least help demystify that process. And it starts really with listening to our inventors, working with them to understand patentability points, points of protection, so that we can move forward then in the commercialization process to prove out concepts, determine commercial viability, and find partners to try to commercialize and really just move those technologies to market. So we do this through a process that is not as linear as we would hope, but we do it through programs, through tools, through services, and frankly, a great team that are here today to answer any additional questions that we have.
Thank you, Ian. I have a question for Eric Caslin, who is our Associate Director for Commercialization and Licensing. Eric, what does an inventor need to know about licensing their invention?
Sure. So if we're licensing to an established company, then I think there's probably, it's important to know that there's some expectation for the inventor to provide some technical input, particularly early on, in helping the licensee to familiarize themselves with the technology or the invention that they've licensed. If we're licensing to a startup, particularly one that you as the inventor are involved in, probably want to get some assistance from our new ventures team. Also, you should know that we would want or require that you as a UK researcher work with the appropriate offices to get in place an appropriate plan for managing potential conflicts of interest. And finally, you should also know that the university, as with most every major research university in the country, is very supportive of this. And one way that we try to incentivize inventors to get involved in licensing their inventions is to share the net proceeds that we receive from licensing. So at UK, it's you as the inventor would receive 40%. Your respective colleges and departments each receive 20%, and then the remaining 20% goes to the University Research Foundation.
Thank you, Eric. We have a question for Matt Upton, our Senior Associate Director for Intellectual Property Development. Matt, can you tell our innovators what's the first thing that they need to do when they're starting to work on an invention?
Well, preferably the first thing I would like them to do is get a hold of our office. And what we could do there is conduct a patent search for that innovator to kind of give them a sense of what the patent landscape is. So that can kind of not direct their research, but let them know where any trouble areas may be and see what other people have done. And that may provide a little bit of guidance as to, you know, where there's empty space for technological advancement. If they're further along, they can still do that at any time. But if they've already developed it, then the first step would be to fill out one of the invention disclosure reports on our website and disclose it to our office. Then we would start the process, which would include a patent landscape search at that point. But if we're waiting all the way till the research is complete, then that provides OTC office some guidance, but not as much to the inventor, which would occur at the earlier stage.
Thank you, Matt. Next question is for Allie Yankee, our Senior Contracts Coordinator. Allie, can you talk about when an NDA should be used and how OTC can help with that?
Sure. A non-disclosure agreement should be used anytime that you are sharing information outside of the university. So if you're having conversations with a researcher at another university, you're going to want to have a non-disclosure in place. We can, or if you're, you know, on the same level, if you're having conversations with someone at a private organization outside the university, you're also going to want a non-disclosure in place. In order to start a non-disclosure, you need to reach out to myself. Most of the time, if you're working with a for-profit company, they're going to want to use their own non-disclosure, so they may send that to you. You can forward that on to me. If you want to start the non-disclosure process, then you just need to reach out to me. Let me know who you want to share with and what you want to share, and we can start that process with using our template.
Thank you, Allie. This question is for Tanya Phillips, our Senior Associate Director for New Ventures and Alliances. Tanya, can you explain what UK Win is?
Sure. UK Win is it's a program that we have for female innovators on campus. And so we know that when female innovators are involved in technology commercialization, that, you know, their patents they're getting patented at the same rate as men, and their technologies are commercialized at about the same rate. But where the differential is at the beginning in getting them to disclose and really get involved in the technology development process. So that's the impact that we're trying to have, is to have more females involved in the front end of that. Let them know that there are others that have gone through this process and been successful and had successful startups, and just create an environment that's conducive to helping them along, helping them understand what's involved, that it's not this big scary thing, and just trying to help them be successful in getting their technologies out into the public space.
Thank you, Tanya. I have a question for Eric Hartman, who is our Associate Director for New Ventures. Eric, can you explain what New Ventures is?
Sure. Thanks, Jackie. So New Ventures is, well, as a team, we're a team that is focused on helping commercialize the technology from the point of the idea through the point of, if a startup is going to be formed as a part of the commercialization process, moving toward that direction, de-risking the technology to the point where it makes sense to form a startup, and where there's activity that could be done through that startup. So it could be working with a strategic partner in industry, it could be applying for a grant, it could be moving toward an investment, other things like that would be done through the work of a startup. But as a team, we're working on helping to commercialize that technology really from the point of disclosure to the office, and at the earliest stages that we can get engaged. We want to help you figure out how will that technology reach greatest impact in the market, and what are the things that need to be done both within the university and then potentially outside the university through a startup to help make that happen.
Thank you, Eric. This question is from Matt. Matt, how do I know my technology can be patented?
Okay.
That's a pretty loaded question. So one of the ways to know if it is patentable is to have our office kind of take a look at it, right? Because there's two things you need to look at when determining, can you get a patent on something? One, is it patentable subject matter? Meaning, is it something that the United States Patent Office recognizes as having a utility, and that is something that can be patented? The examples of things that cannot be patented are algorithms or natural discoveries. Unfortunately, in the United States, current jurisprudence says that things such as the mere discovery of biomarkers is not an invention. The use of those biomarkers in a treatment may be, but biomarkers in and of themselves aren't patentable subject matter. So that's one hurdle. The next hurdle is, once you've gotten over that patentability issue, is, are you the first to think of this, right? And there's kind of two approaches the Patent Office takes. One is there a reference that discloses each and every element of your invention? And that's known as anticipation. And then the next is, would it have been obvious to one of skill in the art to do what you're doing? Meaning, can the Patent Office take a number of references and put them together to reject? And the only way you're going to know that is by being familiar with the prior art in a given technology field. And one of the easiest ways to do that, again, and I'll come back to it, is to contact our office, contact me specifically, and we can run a patent landscape search to give you a sense of what's out there, what kind of prior art is there, what has been filed in this patent space, so you can see what other people have done in this area to see if what you have is patentable. Now, at the end of the day, no patent search is perfect, but at least it gives you a sense of what's out there.
Thank you, Matt. We also have Raja Krishnan, who is one of our commercialization managers, and he would like to add a little additional information. Raja?
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. And Matt, if you don't mind, I'll just add a little bit more color as well from my perspective. So what I have suggested to researchers that I've talked to and potential inventors is, when you're in the process of, asking me about, when do I disclose, right? When do I disclose an invention, or when do I check with the office? When is the right time to do that, right? So this is one suggestion. When you're in the process of developing a manuscript, a draft manuscript of some research that you've done, when you're in that process, and after that, as you reflect on that and you think that there could be something novel, or you're not sure, or it could be maybe it's patentable, but again, you're not sure, that's the time to check. It usually goes hand in hand. So my trigger point that I would recommend is, when you're developing a manuscript, reflect on that, see if you have questions about it, then contact our office at that time. I think that that's the best measure. And a lot of times inventors, when they fill out our invention report form, they typically can have attachments, and sometimes those attachments are just draft manuscripts. So my recommendation is to use that as a benchmark. Every time you are about to write a manuscript or in the midst of it, think and reflect whether this could be something that's an invention. And if there's any doubt or any questions about it, let our office know.
Thank you, Raja, for that additional information. Ian, you about how innovators can find collaborators for their research?
Yeah, so this is one thing that we like to help innovators with, and that is we're not here just to be reactive to the things that you have already discovered. We're also here to help you in the discovery process and to find collaborators, and most pointedly, industry collaborators, because that's ultimately, if we can help partnerships be effectuated through the research process, it's interesting the dynamics that can be at play, because sort of what demand there might be, what the market is actually asking for, and it can lead your research to points of patentability, points of commercial viability. And so our office has not just a Rolodex of contacts, but strong relationships with industry. We do this often, and we have some of the people that you've just heard talk are excellent experts at partnering, at building relationships with industry, who are interested in working with our scientists, our researchers here at UK, and we can do a lot to help you identify who those people are and even broker those relationships, whether it's for just research or whether it's for pursuing a grant opportunity through SBIR or STTR.
Thank you, Ian. Speaking of SBIR, Eric Hartman, can you talk about how someone would know if they're a candidate for an SBIR?
Sure. So SBIR, for those that don't know, it's the Small Business Innovation Research Program, and STTR is the Small Business Technology Transfer Program, I think, or I'm sorry, I don't remember what that one stands for, but SBIR and STTR, they're sister programs. A lot of times we use just SBIR to stand for both of those programs together. Essentially, those are grant funds that are available to for-profit companies, for-profit small businesses, to do technical de-risking work of very high-tech, deep tech type work. So university technologies are the perfect fit for SBIR usually. There are 11 federal agencies that participate nationally in the program. So these are all national federal awards. And each of the 11 federal agencies are different and unique in terms of the types of things that they fund and the things that they want to fund. Generally speaking, SBIR is intended for areas where there are deep technology risks. So hurdles that need to be answered, problems that need to be solved from a technology perspective. So the funds cannot be used for marketing or other things like that. They need to be used for really technology de-risking and moving that technology forward. So our office is available and happy to work with you on that. We also host a monthly meetup called SBIR Unplugged, and that happens to be tomorrow night, actually, for anybody that's interested. So that information is on Eventbrite if you're interested. It's sbirunplugged.eventbrite.com, and you can find information there, or you can just contact our office and we can share that information with you. But that's a great opportunity for someone. It's really just a meetup for anybody in Kentucky who is interested in SBIR, STTR, to come on, and for those that have received those awards before, to be able to share, and for those that don't know what they are and are interested, to be able to come on and ask some very entry-level questions and sometimes very technical questions. So if you're trying to figure out, should you do SBIR versus STTR, that's a very common question that we talk about at SBIR Unplugged, and other questions like that. So the differences between the 11 federal agencies and how to go about applying, and all kinds of special type questions about how to be successful.
Thank you, Eric. We had a follow-up question. Someone asked, what's the difference between SBIR and STTR?
So the difference between those programs is, and it depends on which federal agency that you're dealing with, but generally speaking, the difference is how involved the research partner, so in other words, the university or a federal research lab, any of those could be a qualifying research partner. So how involved is that research partner going to be in the research project? And so if the research partner is going to be heavily involved, then STTR can be a better fit. If it's going to be more of the work done at the small business and maybe less of the work done up to none of the work done at a research partner, then that could be a candidate for SBIR. So SBIR is a larger program. STTR is about 1/10 the size, roughly speaking. But it's the funding rates are very similar actually between SBIR and STTR, because SBIR tends to get a lot more applications from non-university applicants, and STTR tends to be heavily university-focused applicants.
Thank you, Eric. And we have SBIR is a popular topic. We have another comment and question. The comment is, some SBIR small businesses seem to want to own any and all IP that may result from the program. But under Bayh-Dole, each should own its own new developments and develop an allocation of rights. Is this a possible exception? Has OTC already licensed IP to the small business in these cases?
So I'll let others chime in on this, but definitely Bayh-Dole is required for SBIR applicants as well. And so it's a federal grant. There's a lot of terms and conditions that come with that, and federal law applies. Bayh-Dole is one of those laws that applies. So, and I'll also say that inventorship is defined in the law, so it's not really up to opinion as to who is an inventor. So what we would say is that if something is solely invented by the small business, then it's the property of the small business. If it's solely invented by a contractor to that small business, then it would be the rights of whoever that inventor is, so that inventor's institution. And if it's jointly developed by the small business and a research partner, then it would be jointly owned. And most universities, in my experience, as you go through the process of setting up the subcontract from the small business to the university to do the SBIR funded work, there will be an agreement in that contract that will say how IP will be owned and managed. Typically speaking, the universities will acknowledge that the IP is jointly owned, and they will want to take the leadership in filing the patents around that IP and then licensing it back to the company if the company chooses to license it. So I'll welcome others to jump in there as well.
Yes, does anyone else want to add to that information?
Just to add to what Eric said, in an SBIR or STTR format, it's important to remember that the recipient, the primary recipient of the grant, is as Eric mentioned, a for-profit company. And that means that the work that's being developed, even if under subaward to a university, the work that's being developed is to further the tech development efforts and the business of the primary recipient of the grant. And so in every case, it makes total sense, the most sense, any sense, that that entity retains the rights to practice the commercial use and application of the things that might be developed at the university. However, the difference between owning IP and having exclusive rights to use IP is slim to none, right? And so in every case, we work via the contract with the primary recipient of the grant. In the subaward contract to the university, we work out the facilitation of the company to have, in almost every case, exclusive rights to commercialize that technology that's going to be developed as a result of the scope of work under that subaward. So that's, we as a university, as UKOTC, our policy is to be as flexible as possible working with our commercial partners, and that includes small companies under the SBIR STTR program.
Thank you, Ian.
So, Jackie, if I could jump back in, so just one more aspect of that question. So I think the question asks something about, is the technology already licensed to the startup? And I'd like to just address that quickly. So if you're a faculty member who's considering forming a startup and pursuing an SBIR, you should talk to our office and receive an option, if not a full license to the technology before you pursue the SBIR. So we can work with you in the option mode to be very quick and to do that in a way that is supportive of your SBIR, but we encourage you to come to us maybe as much as 90 days in advance of submitting that grant, and talk with us about, the fact that you want to pursue the SBIR. How can we help you do that? What resources do we have that could help with that in addition to the option conversation?
Thank you, Eric. Allie, this question's for you. If I've already sent and received materials without an MTA, what should I do?
If you've already sent or received material without a material transfer agreement, then you just need to contact our office, myself specifically, and we can get that paperwork in place. Sometimes we can backdate it. It kind of just depends on who the material came from. Usually other universities are willing to work with us. I'm working with a university right now where the material was transferred 8 years ago without an MTA, and they're willing to work with us. It's actually their material, it's not ours. So the best thing for you to do is just to reach out to our office as soon as possible.
Allie, can you speak a little bit of why it's important to have an MTA?
Sure. It's important to have a material transfer agreement. From the university's perspective, it's important because we own that material. We want to make sure that whatever the recipient uses the material for, we still have ownership over. Also liability, we want to make sure if we send them a material and something goes wrong with it, they can't come back and sue the university. But from an individual researcher's perspective, you want to make sure that whatever you create, your invention or your material, stays with you and you get credit for that. You don't want someone else to get credit for that.
Thank you. This question is for Sabrina Darnell, our Intellectual Property and Compliance Coordinator. Sabrina, how does an innovator let OTC know they have federal funding?
When you have federal funding and you do a disclosure, it's listed on the disclosure form. So you just need to fill out that information. But if you've already disclosed and did not include it on the disclosure form, you need to reach out to myself and provide me with the needed information and report it to Edison.
Thank you. Eric Caslin, what if somebody approaches me about licensing my invention?
I would say great. That's fantastic. A lot of licenses result from established companies contacting university researchers about or in response to maybe a publication they had in a scientific journal. Or any publicly available information. It might be a conference presentation or sometimes a patent document itself that is published. So when they do contact you as the inventor and express interest in licensing or at least learning more about your invention, please contact us as soon as possible so that our office can be involved in those discussions from the outset. Usually they'll want to know understandably, more about the technology, its current development stage, and they'd like to know more probably than what's publicly available in that document that they found. So to help facilitate that, we'd like to get a non-disclosure agreement in place with the company to facilitate those discussions and eventually perhaps a visit to your lab and address any questions the company may have, as well as questions that we would like to know from the company. For example, what resources and expertise do they have to further develop the particular technology?
Thank you, Eric. Raja, would you like to speak a little bit on an earlier question we had on how researchers can find collaborators?
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. Yeah, I had thoughts that I would like to share for our researchers. When this is, again, we're in COVID times, it's a little different, but pre-COVID, you guys all attending different academic conferences, right? So when you go to those academic conferences, I strongly encourage you to try to engage and interact with fellow industry researchers. Those that work in companies, those researchers, engage with them, get their feedback on what you're doing and what you're working on. Try to establish that type of connections. Make sure to get business cards and take some notes on those, and let our office know who you've reached out to and connected to at these different conferences. You know, when I've talked to companies before to get their feedback on different technologies, and also finding out, you know, when they might be or how they might be interested in doing sponsored research, one of the biggest things I said is that it's really between the academic researcher and the industry researchers. I mean, that's where the driving force is. Our office can definitely facilitate and assist that on our side, but you know, the driving force is that relationship between the academic researcher and the industry researcher. So I guess what I'm saying is I highly recommend to our researchers to, you know, try to engage every conference you go to, you know, try to make it a goal to interact with at least a couple of people from industry, certain companies that you've already targeted maybe ahead of time that work in that particular area, and try to find out those industry researchers and talk to them, let them know what you have, and get some feedback, establish that relationship and get their business cards.
Thank you, Raja. Matt, can you explain to me when I would want to try to get a patent, a copyright, or a trademark?
So each of those are separate and distinct types of intellectual property. So they're kind of defined by the nature of, you know, what has been developed. With respect to patents, patents typically deal with an invention of a thing or a method of doing something. So the development of some type of widget, some type of device, or a method of treatment, a method of doing things. And that is kind of more of your scientific advancement type technology. With respect to copyright, each of us make a copyright every day. We just don't know it, right? I've been taking notes since the meeting began, and I have a copyright in that. However, when we're talking about the copyrights we're interested in and what we can protect, it's some examples that have come through our office are training programs in the healthcare field, and things such as that. So if you and your team have worked together to develop something that is a training or potentially a computer program or an application that is more suited for copyright protection. Now, you have copyright protection as soon as you embody that idea, right? Because that is what copyright protects. It is the embodiment of that idea in written form. So if that's a program or an application, that would be the underlying code and potentially how the graphical interface looks. If it's in training material, that's actually what you type out and present and have in PDF, and maybe you have a presentation. Everything that's embodied would also have a copyright on it. We would ask that you submit whatever you have and get it to us, and we can make that determination, you know, is this something that is eligible for patent protection or something that is just eligible for copyright protection. The reason that's important to tell us about even the copyright is by claiming we have a copyright, we could put a copyright mark on that to give other people notice we are claiming a copyright in it, and it gives us the ability to license that. Now, you may not be interested in licensing it for money, but what completing a license does allow us to do is have some level of control. A lot of the groups that come to our office that have a copyright are more interested in providing some type of training and then making sure that the University of Kentucky gets credit for the programs we've developed that are helping others. But in doing that, we want to make sure that our licensees are following our plans. And that license gives us the ability to kind of monitor what they're doing with the ability to pull it back if they're saying they're running our program, but they're actually not, which could disparage the university in some way. So we want to have that ability. Now, I kind of left trademark out because it's the rare version that comes into our office, right? Because a trademark, one of the elements that has to be present in a trademark is the sale of whatever you're trademarking across state lines. So it has to be involved in interstate commerce. And our university, outside of our sports teams and things like that, typically does not have trademarks. Now, if you're an inventor that has come up with a patent and you start your own company and you've developed a widget and you have a patent associated with that and you have developed a product, that is the time to start thinking about a trademark, but more on your small business side rather than the university side. So that's more something that's involved with an actual product for sale. And once you have it for sale, then you can go down this trademark route, whether it is a common law trademark or a registered trademark, depending on what approach you want to take.
Thank you, Matt. Excellent description of those three. Tanya, if I'm an innovator who is interested in going to a conference and pitching my technology, can OTC help with funding?
Yes, we can. So we have a program called UK Pitch that has been around for probably about 3 years. And so if you have disclosed to our office an invention, then it's our job to help you commercialize that, as is in our name. And so we want to do all that we can to help you along those lines. So one of the things we do is support faculty who want to pitch their idea at an industry conference or an investor conference where they may need funding for travel. So typically we reimburse up to $1,000 for travel expenses for them to go to a conference or an event to pitch their idea, because in the end that's going to help the idea to get a little further down that commercialization path.
Thank you, Tanya. Sabrina, can you talk about what an innovator needs to do to stay in compliance?
To stay in compliance, they basically need to just tell us that there is something that needs to be reported to iEdison, and then, and that we make sure that we meet all of the deadlines as moving forward with the patent, but our office will handle it from there on out once we receive notice. If there is any questions, I will reach out if I need more involvement from the inventors.
For those who don't know, what is iEdison?
iEdison is where we submit federal grants that have been submitted and approved for compliance, and to let the government know exactly where their money has been spent and that it's moving forward with what they intended it to move forward for. Does anyone want to add to that? That's my best description for it.
Yeah, just to add to what Sabrina was saying, I mean, iEdison is essentially the system that has been created by NIST to manage compliance with federal grants, with recipients of federal grants under Bayh-Dole, and more than one federal agency utilizes the iEdison system to manage their grant recipients' compliance from an intellectual property standpoint. And so essentially it is for those universities that receive federal grants and produce intellectual property. It's for them to manage the resulting intellectual property under Bayh-Dole through the iEdison system. The iEdison system is getting better. They're making improvements to it, as Sabrina knows.
Yes.
But unfortunately, doing the compliance itself is a very tedious task and requires lots of interactions with the system. And so fortunately for all of our innovators here, OTC takes care of that for you. And Sabrina does that on behalf of UK and UKRF and the innovators. And we all owe her a bit of gratitude for putting up with the iEdison system.
Ian, since the name of the office is Office of Technology Commercialization, can you explain what commercialization means with innovations?
Jackie, that's a really, really good question. Frankly, the word commercialization is one that that elicits very different responses depending on who is using it or receiving that word. It does not mean to make money. And I think that's a really important thing to get across here. We are not just here to monetize the innovation of UK. We are here as a paramount, above all other things, to move our technologies to market for public use and benefit. And that's an important thing to remember. Now, in the process, it's nice to make some money too. But most important to us is to ensure that our technologies, our fantastic inventions, our discoveries that are developed by our innovators here at UK are given the best opportunity to have impact on a societal level. And so that's everything that we are doing. Now, commercialization includes many steps along the process. It is an umbrella term, so to speak, that includes the steps of intellectual property development, licensing and partnering, technology assessment and de-risking those technologies to make sure that we can actually get it to a point where we can entice the interest of industry partners and investors and other stakeholders that are willing to share in the risk of getting that technology to market. We wish that it was an overnight process, but it is not. But frankly, we here have a lot of patience, and we hope that you do too, because in the end, there is no better feeling than actually having a product used in the market, and you get to see that UK develop something that is saving or improving lives, and that's what commercialization is all about.
Thank you, Ian. Eric Hartman, can you talk about, in that vein, what the UK Excel program does for innovators and their technology?
Absolutely. So UK Excel is a program that we have, and it's offered statewide through a program called UXL. But the UK Excel part is the UK innovator side. And so what that program does is it helps really from the point of idea disclosure to our office, moving that technology and understanding what it would take for that technology to go forward into some type of commercialization, whether it be through licensing to a corporate partner, whether it be through a startup, whether it be through kind of a joint program. And so we work to help set a plan at a high level for commercialization and to understand what types of things would need to be done, what types of risks are associated with that technology, who might be a potential user for that technology and why they might care, what the value proposition in the market for that technology is. And then because the program focuses exclusively on deep tech, we're really interested in things such as regulatory. So if the technology is subject to some type of regulatory oversight, we want to know what that oversight is and what types of things would be necessary in order to get those approvals. We're also looking at when does the company become a target for acquisition or licensed by a major corporate. So ultimately, we view a startup as just a step in the process of commercializing a technology. And so we look at whether it's direct licensing or whether it has to go through a startup and eventually to a corporate partner. What would that process be? When could that occur? What the steps would be? How much money would be involved? Other things like that. So that's the types of things that we talked about in UK Excel.
Thank you. UXL is handled through LaunchBlue. UK OTC just received an EDA grant to help fund LaunchBlue. Can you talk a little bit more about what that's going to do for the state of Kentucky?
Sure. So the EDA grant, as you said, provides some funding to help us execute on the mission of LaunchBlue. So LaunchBlue is a program that we, in collaboration with a long list of industry partners statewide or partners statewide, help to stand up. And what the program is an accelerator program for technologies and for startups. And so we have two arms of that program, or at least two arms of the program. One of those arms is for community startups that are forming and that are not related to the university, and we have the accelerator program of Launch Blue associated with that. And then one of the cohorts is UXL, as we mentioned. And so that program is open statewide to all of the universities and institutes of higher education that are affiliated with Kentucky Commercialization Ventures, or KCV. And so those programs, or those innovators, can apply to be a part of Launch Blue. So the EDA grant's just going to help us to put on those types of cohorts to be able to offer labs, which would be focused workshops around things of interest to startups in the startup community, and then a demo day every year. So once a year, we'll be offering a demo day where people that have gone through various Launch Blue programs will be eligible to get some additional exposure for their ideas to people regionally and beyond. So ultimately, our goal with Launch Blue is to help people succeed beyond the current stage. So we want to help that technology move forward to the point that it can reach the next level, whatever that would be, of moving towards success.
Allie, if I ask somebody to sign an NDA and they refuse, how should I proceed?
If an outside organization will not sign a non-disclosure agreement, well, I wouldn't trust that outside organization, and I definitely would not share any information with them that you consider proprietary.
Thank you. This question is for Ian and/or Tanya. Can you talk a little bit about OTC support of the Enrich program?
Tanya, you want to take it?
Sure. So the Enrich program is a program that came out of a grant that we got 2.5 years ago through the NIH, NIGMS sector. And that grant was to expand biomedical innovations in our Southeast region. And so as part of that grant, we wanted to reach out and do something to help small tech transfer offices and tech transfer offices with at HBCU schools, so historically Black colleges and universities. And so we created a program called Enrich, where HBCU university innovators can apply. And it's very similar to the Launch Blue program that Eric talked about. So they're going through a 10-week program, and they're learning different things about how to commercialize their technology. A lot of it's focused on customer discovery, helping them figure out, who the customer is. Does anybody want this technology, and how do you get it out into the market? And so we're in our first cohort now. We're looking at extending the program. We've got a lot of interest in it from literally around the country. And so we're looking at people that may want to sponsor it, or may want to help support it so that this can be something that is sustainable. We focused on historically Black colleges and universities this year, but we're going to expand that next year to all minority serving institutions, and in particular Hispanic serving institutions. So we're really excited about this program and what we think it could do at universities where tech transfer offices are not as large as and expansive as what we have at the University of Kentucky.
Thank you, Tanya. I have two last questions. One is for whoever wants to take it. Does the inventor need to be fully engaged in the commercialization process?
I'll take it. We would love it if they would be. It is not an obligation of the inventor. It is not something that we require, but it does negatively impact the potential for commercialization. So if an inventor is serious about seeing their discovery have impact on society, then their commitment to work with us through the process should be something that they should seriously consider. And here's why. When you develop a discovery, that naked discovery has very little chance of actually being commercialized on its own without additional effort and work, and frankly also with the know-how of the smartest person in the room that knows that discovery, which is the inventor. And so when we work with partners and investors and potential startup team members and potential grant funders and those supporting the SBIR process, they want to know, how do we further develop this technology, and is the original inventor going to be committed to that development work? And so all of our programs are set up so that we are engaging the inventor in that process, working with them to support them and help direct them to turn those corners, ask the right questions, discover the right answers, and the process just works better if the inventor is engaged. Now, again, you don't have to be, and the time commitment does not have to be incredibly large either. There are other ways that we can attempt to commercialize technology by taking it out to industry partners and things, but that pathway is has a much lower potential for realizing results than a pathway that has a committed and engaged inventor that can work with us through the programs that we've developed. So hopefully we can get that level of engagement.
Thank you, Ian. And can you also talk about OTC's role with the newly formed Kentucky Commercialization Ventures?
Yes, absolutely. This is a new initiative of the state. University of Kentucky is a partnered leader in KCV. We've partnered with the University of Louisville, the state's Cabinet for Economic Development, and the Kentucky Science and Technology Corporation to develop a third technology transfer office in the state that serves specifically the regional universities and the Kentucky community and technical college system. All of these are institutions that have not traditionally had dedicated technology transfer and commercialization offices. And now we do. And so that's KCV. UK OTC is here to support in that process. We are the land grant flagship institution in the state. It is part of our mission to provide service and help build the entire culture of economic development and innovation here in the state. And so we see ourselves carrying out that mission through KCV to help support the rising tide, so to speak, of innovation capacity, commercialization capacity here. And so we love working with our sister institutions through that process, and where we are now we've almost completed the hiring of a team that makes out the KCV program.
Thank you so much, Ian. I'd like to thank all of the staff for being available and answering questions, and thank you for attending. We have recorded this, and we will be putting it up on our YouTube channel in case you want to look at it again or share it with colleagues. You can also get in contact with us anytime by emailing otcinfo@uky.edu. Website. We're also on Twitter and LinkedIn for social media. And if you haven't signed up for our monthly newsletter, you can do that as well on our website. Again, thank you all very much. And we'll have another webinar coming in November. Thanks, everyone.